Did you get into that chicken wing yet?
McDowell's soul food and barbecue, by the way.
Hello cả nhà, vị chú đang có mặt tại Laguna Beach và đi đường về đi làm việc thì đi đường về cũng ghi một số hình ảnh cho mọi người. Là khu này rất là đẹp, đồi và rất là đẹp nha các bạn.
Stay in the left 2 lanes.
Như các bạn trong cái tuần hôm thứ ba vừa rồi thì tổng thống Trump đã đi đến New York để gọi là trình diện với cảnh sát và cũng ra cái phiên tòa tại New York. Và sau đó trong ngày thì ông Trump về trong ngày luôn các bạn, về trong ngày luôn. Và chúng ta thấy là ông tổng thống Trump bị đàn áp, quá là đàn áp của tụi dân chủ, và bị kết đến 34 tội, trong 34 tội cho đến 34 tội các bạn. Và như vậy thì cho dù bị truy tố 34 tội nhưng mà ông Trump không có nhận tội và cũng đã lên nói là đây là những cái chiêu trò chính trị của đảng Dân Chủ. Và ông Trump vẫn còn tiếp tục chạy đua vào cho vị trí tổng thống của cuộc bầu cử vào tổng thống President election vào 2024.
In 1.2 miles, turn left onto El Toro Road.
Đó là tin mừng cho những người vì cái cuộc truy tố và xét xử này có thể kéo dài qua cái cuộc bầu cử luôn. Và nếu ông Trump nói là ông Trump khi bị truy tố thì ông Trump vẫn chạy đua vào cái đường đua của President Election 2024. Trở về với bản tin hôm nay thì bà tổng thống của Đài Loan là Thái Anh Văn đã đến California để dự hội nghị với cuộc họp với Chủ tịch Hạ viện của Hoa Kỳ hiện giờ là ông Kevin McCarthy. Trong cái vai trò của bà Thái Anh Văn thì đây là một Hoa Kỳ coi trọng cái chính sách một Trung Quốc của Trung Quốc. Tuy nhiên là vẫn coi trọng cái chính sách của Đài Loan. Và khi mà bà Thái Anh Văn đến thăm Hoa Kỳ thì ở phương tiện ngoại giao thì tổng thống Joe Biden hay là bà phó tổng thống Kamala Harris cũng không cái đối trọng, không phải là một cái gọi là một cái quốc gia, chưa hẳn một cái quốc gia mà Hoa Kỳ coi trọng nên gọi là một nước nga độc lập. Nhưng mà vì vậy thì ông Joe Biden hay bà Kamala Harris cũng không thể tiếp được, mà là ông Chủ tịch Kevin McCarthy tiếp. Đây là thành phố Laguna Beach Hill các bạn. Mỹ chú đang đi làm và đi về lại Little Sài Gòn. Đây là một số cái hình ảnh rất là đẹp mà các bạn có thể thấy ở đây, rất là đẹp.
People's stucco on their homes. So what they do is they deploy Labrador retrievers who go after and sniff out the snails.
That makes sense.
Do they eat them?
Yeah.
Ugh.
What's wrong with a dog eating a snail?
I don't want my dog to eat a snail.
Your dog's probably eaten worse.
Maybe. Silver leaf disease is a curse for a bunch of different kinds of plants, from pears to roses to rhododendron.
Beautiful.
It infects leaves and branches,
At the light,
and the
use
fungus
the
can
right
be
two
fatal for
lanes
the
to turn
plant
onto Laguna
if
Canyon
it's
Road.
not quickly treated. Now, here's an interesting story. A 61-year-old Indian mycologist,
What is a mycologist?
somebody who
Keep
studies
right
the
onto
fungus,
Laguna Canyon Road.
has contracted a rather serious case of silver leaf disease in his
Use the
throat.
right lane to keep right onto
Maybe you
Laguna
want to put
Canyon
down
Road.
that fungus, huh?
Isn't this the story of The Last of Us? That there was a plant-borne fungus that eventually infected the humans and caused us all to go zombie?
Keep right.
I'm sure that's a plot for many different movies.
next
A
light,
recent
turn
published
right.
case described this male patient in the eastern region of India presenting to a medical center with a cough, a hoarse voice, fatigue, and difficulty swallowing. A CT X-ray scan of his neck revealed,
At the light, turn right
yes,
onto Laguna Canyon
Get it.
Road.
revealed a pus-filled abscess next to his trachea.
Why did that excite you?
Because I was not expecting that. I was expecting that they found like a little flake of something, not a pus-filled abscess.
When your wife tells you tales from nursing school, is it always over dinner?
Most of the time.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's fascinating.
yeah.
And are you ever like mid-bite and she's like, and then the blood and the
I
pus-filled...
just scream out, "This chicken!"
Operator. Do we know how much betting has increased problem gambling?
I mean, one of the reasons that professional sports teams have embraced sports betting, not only is it that there's some revenue that can come their way through sponsorships, but it does increase engagement in games because you now have a financial incentive. You're not only a fan, but you have money riding on this game, and you're more likely to watch it through to the end. And so it does increase engagement. But there is also a reason to believe that at least for a share of the population, that they are going to have a hard time managing, the bets and the debts that come from those bets, and the ability to be betting any time of the day or night on sports that are happening at different places around the United States or even around the world. And it is relatively new in the United States, outside of Nevada, but even in Nevada, it was a brick and mortar activity for the most part until recently, and in New Jersey as well. It's still maturing, but the best place to look for evidence of how this will play out is in UK or Australia or in other countries where sports betting has been a developed phenomenon for some time, and there is pretty compelling evidence there of a growing portion of the population of young men in particular who have become truly addicted to sports betting. And the National Health Service has been quite vocal about this and publicly writing letters to the sports betting platforms in Britain saying there is a major social problem that has emerged in Britain and we really need you to take steps. For example, they're high loss customers, and these platforms know that they're high loss customers. But then these platforms in UK have been giving them, quote, VIP treatment. The NHS, the National Health Service, wrote letters to these platforms and said, you've got to stop doing this. You've got to stop, enticing these people who have lost lots of money with special treatment to entice them to bet even more. You have to stop taking credit card bets. You have to, end some of these commercial deals, which are, promoting betting so intensely at all hours and particularly during games. So the social consequences, if you want to see where the United States is headed, and then you need to probably look overseas where the betting is at a more mature place. And I think that the sports betting operators realize that they control in part their own destiny, and that they need to get ahead of this and figure out ways to help manage it to prevent the social consequences being so great that there will be a backlash against them.
Yeah, I have to say, I was amazed when this crept into broadcasting to see, veteran broadcasters at doing live events seeming to give their personal endorsements to gambling. I mean, they would give the name of the sports book that they're in partnership with and say who they think might do well in the back nine of a golf tournament or in the second half of a game. do the networks have any second thoughts about doing this stuff?
Use the right 3 lanes.
I mean,
to
there's
merge onto
the media
CA1
has
north
become a
toward
part of this
I-405.
enterprise, and there are media companies that take cuts on betting as well, and you know it's a huge economy at this point. That is, not only is it the sports betting platforms and the teams, but even players are now being sponsored by sports betting platforms. And then, there are podcasts and there are, popular media figures who are both broadcasters, but then they're also being paid by the sports betting companies to promote sports betting. And, there's a lot of lines that are hard to determine, exactly, is this person a sports, journalist, or are they a sports betting marketing agent? A lot of lines have been blurred as, professional sports has become effectively a gambling enterprise in the United States now.
Wow, yeah. And we should note that in full disclosure, The Athletic, which is a prestigious sports online journalism organization, which is owned by the New York Times, has a partnership with BetMGM. So it's everywhere, isn't it?
Right. There are many newspapers that have embraced sports betting as a source of revenue, and it is definitely something that is it's part of our culture now.
One of the things that I wondered is, for a long time, the sports leagues didn't want sports gambling because they wanted to protect the integrity of the sport. And there are some famous scandals, the Black Sox scandal. And it occurred to me that once you can place a bet on your phone in a minute, what's to stop a player or even a sports writer who is at a game and finds out that, the star starting pitcher here has some elbow soreness that nobody knows about yet. I can place a bet. Do we have any idea if this is either happening or if regulators are worried about it happening?
The players themselves are being monitored pretty closely for potential bets that they're placing, and then they are punished pretty intensely if that does occur. And because they, all of this data, unless if you're registering on your own name, and in order to register, you generally have to produce identification, and there's some verification check of your identity when you register as a player. I mean, you could figure out a way to falsify that. But if a professional sports player does attempt to place a bet, there are companies like, I mentioned GeoComply, which is checking your physical location. There are other companies that are checking who's betting. And there are yet other companies that are monitoring patterns in betting. So if suddenly there's an enormous flood of bets to suggest, on an unusual thing, there are companies who are tracking those patterns to see whether or not there is some type of insider information that is driving people to bet in a way in which, perhaps illegally, there's been, an injury or a player is going to be out that day. That type of monitoring is also
What happened when the cheese factory blew up?
There was debris everywhere. Do you know what happened when the aircon broke down in the cheese factory?
There was a complete meltdown!
And what happens when you stack Swiss cheese, American cheese, and nacho cheese with barbecue sauce and chicken bacon over a juicy flame grilled beef or fried chicken patty?
You get the cheesiest burger in town! The Burger King Barbecue Cheesy Trio! Hurry to your nearest Burger King now!
Far away, lying by my side. When I go away.
And it seemed as if the Montebello Islands would offer everything that we wanted.
Fairly close to the Western Australian mainland, and also a site of great biodiversity and much, natural value.
The Australian government formally agreed to the islands being used as a nuclear test site in May 1951. Robert Menzies, the Australian Prime Minister at the time, was not only a well-known Anglophile, and possibly felt flattered to be asked, but he and his government also had their own nuclear aspirations for Australia in mind.
It went overboard with money and resources and people, and it comes through some of the documents where they say things like, we don't just want to be hewers of wood and bearers of water. We want to actually be at the centre of this. But that's all we ever did. We just carried the water and cut the trees for the British.
It was in Chatham Dockyard that HMS Campania prepared to sail.
The very first
Rồi, xin chào cả nhà nha. Và một số tin tức cũng như một cái chỗ cảnh từ Laguna Hills rất là đẹp cho mọi người xem. Xin cảm ơn cả nhà nha.
Carry out a mission which has affected modern history and shaped British defence policy to